Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, sustaining Alaska's pipeline and its operations today and into the future.
The National Weather Service.
Good Thursday evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on the 6th of April. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information no matter what part of Alaska you're watching from tonight. You can do that easily with the Alaska Weather Information Line at 800-472-0391. And if you haven't used that in a while, get a pen and paper and write down the numbers that you use to dial in your forecast and all the choices that you make. The next time you do that, you could do it a little bit faster and not have to listen to all the prompts. Save you a little bit of time. If you are on the internet, go to weather.gov/Alaska. There are several different options to get that information to you. One of which is to go to this site and then dial in the places you'd like to see a little bit more of, or you can start locally at weather.gov/Fairbanks, weather.gov/Anchorage, or weather.gov/Juneau. Of course, there's social media as well. You can find us on Instagram under NWS for the entire National Weather Service, or give NWS Fairbanks a shot. You're seeing some nice pictures from them lately out of the interior, north and western sections of Alaska as well. You can find us on Twitter and on Facebook anytime. And if you have questions about finding information or what you're looking at and not finding exactly what you want, head to nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov. Send me an email and I'll be happy to steer you in the right direction and answer the questions that you're looking for. Here's a look at what's going on around our state tonight. Across the interior, we have a wind advisory that's mainly in effect for the higher terrain. That's going to go until about 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Gusts up to about 40 miles per hour are possible. The good part of that is we don't think there's enough snow that will reduce visibility when the wind is blowing. So it's not a blowing snow advisory or a winter weather advisory. It's just a wind advisory for some stronger gusts throughout that period between now and about 4 o'clock. Up across the central and eastern Beaufort Seacoast, we have a blizzard warning in red and a winter weather advisory in yellow. The winter weather advisory and the blizzard warning are both for blowing snow because visibility will be that poor at times around the central eastern Beaufort Seacoast. So as you get out toward the east, visibility should improve, maybe under a half mile at times, but for the area shaded in red here, that means that visibility could go below 1/4 of a mile, and it's expected to stay that poor at least through tomorrow morning, or at least through tonight and into tomorrow morning. So conditions will gradually improve, and then the plan is to just call this a winter weather advisory because visibility should continue to improve as we get past Friday morning and perhaps into the afternoon. So you should see some gradual improvement later on this evening and tonight, and then overnight into tomorrow, enough improvement that we'll just call that a winter weather advisory. But the thing to remember is here, the winds are still going to be blowing. There will be snow moving around and the visibility will still be poor, but things will gradually get better as we move towards Saturday. At least that's how it looks right now. There will still be an opportunity for some wind, and here's why. Low pressure across the western Gulf is still Mother Nature's vacuum across the western Gulf right there. You can see that drier air being blown northward, so a little bit of a break in the wetter weather around south central. Certainly a break in the weather for southeast. But for the west coast, those northerly winds are continuing, and that's blowing in moisture across the Alaska Peninsula, keeping some snow in the region around many of the villages there. And across the north slope, high pressure that's feeding the air into the low pressure system is still intact. And what that means is that pressure gradient across the north slope is still fairly tight. And this is where we're getting that easterly wind reaching up to blizzard conditions there for the central Beaufort Seacoast, and enough blowing wind and snow across the eastern part of the coast that visibility is poor there as well. Out across the west, you can see a few changes. Before we get there, here's a very brief break in the clouds across the Bering Sea. That's a high pressure ridge breaking up the clouds there, and for places like St. Paul, and from our friends on Instagram that have been showing us wonderful pictures there from St. Paul, and not only the sea lions, but the sea ice that's right up there on the coast. You could see that, well, it looked like a fairly nice day out there in St. Paul today. Out to the west, though, weather system's trying to make that change gradually, very slowly. Already the clouds have moved their way into AKwx and AKwx. You can see them moving from west to east, and that high pressure ridge is gradually weakening and dropping southward. That's going to continue making room for that northerly flow coming down the west coast, and low pressure here is seeming to have the reins on all of the weather controls right now. As we look at the loop one more time, you'll notice that there is a surge of colder air behind this too. What that means is we probably have an opportunity to change any rain out in advance of the storm back into a rain, snow, or maybe all snow mix once it passes. Here's a look at the surface weather map now. Low pressure sitting there at 974 millibars. We have high pressure across western parts of British Columbia, low pressure across the central Yukon, and hit and miss pockets of snow across the west and the interior and the Alaska Peninsula, all thanks to that northerly wind we were talking about. It looks like it snowed around Dutch Harbor and Unalaska today and out across the west coast, or the western chain, a 989 millibar low and a front moving from west to east. As we get into tonight, pockets of rain showers and snow showers will be seen across south central and the northern Gulf coastline. Looks like most of southeast should enjoy a partly to mostly cloudy sky tonight. Generally dry conditions for most places, not all of them of course, but most places will be drier than you've seen. Low pressure just south of Kodiak Island will keep wet weather in your future, it looks like, and it sounds like you're making up kind of rapid gains on a deficit of dry weather for a large part of the year so far. Rain and snow across southwest, especially the Capes and into Bristol Bay, down the Alaska Peninsula, and then we get back into Unalaska and Dutch Harbor and out toward AKwx and AKwx with that weather system moving through. The snow and blowing snow will still be possible across the North Slope coastline. That trend should continue, though precipitation is not really part of your weather picture. It will be blowing around, at least what's been put on the ground already. Across the central and eastern interior, a few areas of rain and snow there as a frontal boundary traps in the coldest air and locks out the warmer, wetter air that many in south central and southwestern Alaska are experiencing now. Southeast looks like you can get another mainly dry day again, a partly to mostly cloudy sky there. The winds shouldn't be too bad, so enjoy your Friday. Across the west coast, pockets of snow across St. Lawrence Island and Nunivak Island. A better chance for rainfall around places like Naknek, all the way down toward Pilot Point, Port Hayden, into a Sand Point, and Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. It looks like you'll mainly be warm enough for rain showers there. Out to the west, another rain and snow makers trying to gear up across the western chain. Most of that will be slowed again by that very gradually release of high pressure across the central and western Gulf. As we get into Saturday, south central looks to see more clouds than any precipitation. There will be opportunities for showers along the mountains and across the eastern side of the Kenai Peninsula and into Prince William Sound with high pressure gaining just a little bit of ground across the central Gulf at 1,000 millibars. Here's some more rain for southeast, generally in the southern half of the panhandle, let's say, Petersburg down toward Wrangell and Ketchikan, Craig, Klawock. You'll have a better chance of showers. Hyder, you're included there. North of Sitka to the capital city, Haines, Skagway, all the way up to Yakutat. It really looks like a better chance of clouds than precipitation at this point, but that's a couple days out. We'll see. Out across the central and eastern interior, watch for some pockets of snow. Most of that will be around the Bettles area and Tanana north. Looks like Fairbanks will be right on the edge, and then you'll have a better chance of seeing more sunshine southward toward the Alaska range. Denali and Healy probably looking at a fair weather day. Out across the YK Delta, periods of rain and snow showers will pop up as unsettled weather will be hovering right over your region. Look for a drier day around Nome and through the Bering Strait. Even the winds seem to let up for you as we start Saturday. For the North Slope, that pressure gradient as indicated by the packing of these isobars here, the lines of constant pressure. The tighter they are, the faster the wind has to flow, and that tightness is right over you. And it looks like poor visibility and at least a chance for some blowing snow will be with you on Saturday. Out across the western Bering, low pressures down to 980 millibars. Once again, a front makes a run at the central Aleutians. This bump right here indicates high pressure, and you can see the difference in the cloud cover here breaking up once again, perhaps over St. Paul. That will likely slow that down a little bit. But there's also not a whole lot in between the low pressure in the west and the wave of low pressure out across the western Bering. So we'll see how far that gets as we go through the weekend. So changes for everybody, but wind continues, it looks like, for the North Slope. Here's a look at our high temperatures today. Speaking of spring, wow, 40s and 50s for southeast today. Ketchikan, Craig, temperatures there all in the lower to mid 50s at least. 54 in Hyder, in fact, 46 and cooler in Sitka, the capital city, in the upper 40s. Haines and Skagway also pushing the line toward 50 degrees. So temperature-wise, a beautiful day in southeast. Again, hope it was a good one for you. 41 around Valdez, Cordova, 39 around Portage and Whittier. As you got down toward Homer and Seward, it was a little bit colder thanks to clouds and rainfall in the region. 44 though in Homer, 48 in Kenai, and 45 in Anchorage. As you moved up toward Talkeetna, temps there were in the upper 40s to about 50 degrees today. Golcana was closer to 45. Northway, Tok, both pushing that 50-degree mark throughout the day today. 39 around Fairbanks. It was a cooler 26 though under cloud cover and snow in the region around Eagle today. 41 around Healy. Fort Greely was 45. Tanana saw temps in the lower 30s throughout a large part of the day. 33 in Fort Yukon. Mid-20s for Arctic Village and AKwx Pass. As you move across the line there into the North Slope, temps range from single digits out to the west to about freezing there as you move out toward the Colville region. Temps across the coast were in the mid-teens, 16 in Kaktovik, 0 in Wainwright. Down the coast toward Point Hope and Point Lay, we saw single digits to upper teens, in fact. Kotzebue Sound in the teens, 20s, even 30s there for Kotzebue itself. 11 around Wales, 32 for Nome, and Unalakleet, 33. Galena had 37 degrees, 35 in Bethel this afternoon, 27 in Nunivak Island. St. Lawrence Island, 19, low 30s around St. Paul and St. George. And as we get into the Bristol Bay region, mid-40s in fact around King Salmon this afternoon. Low 40s for Kodiak Island, 20s and 30s for the Alaska Peninsula, and mid to upper 30s for the central and western chain. Now, overnight lows will stay in the 20s and 30s for a large part of the state. Southwest, north of Dillingham, you're probably going to see temps below freezing, but south of that, you'll have a little bit of a warm pocket right around Kodiak Island to the Bristol Bay region. Colder a little bit down the Alaska Peninsula, and then back to freezing for the central and western chain. 20s and 30s for southeast, at or just above freezing for most of south central. The central and eastern interior in the teens and 20s, and then north of the Yukon River, anywhere from about 10 degrees to about 5 to 10 below across the North Slope. Highs tomorrow up north in the single digits to low teens, anywhere from the upper 30s to mid 40s across the Yukon and the Kuskokwim River valleys. Low 40s around south central, close to 40 in Kodiak, 40s and 50s once again for southeast. I'm so jealous, that sounds so good. 30s across the Alaska Peninsula, 35 in Nunivak Island, 31 in St. Paul, and low 40s for the Aleutians. Nome tomorrow, 33. Flying weather, what about it? IFR conditions under clouds and possibly some snow at times north of the Alaska Range tomorrow. So as you're coming out of VFR moving northward toward the interior, you may find some poor visibility and lowered ceilings there. Moving northward or southward, you'll find much better conditions. As you're looking at southeast, conditions start off fairly good tomorrow. VFR conditions there and through some of our northern passes. IFR and blowing snow still an issue for the Beaufort Seacoast. Through the Bering Strait, watch for IFR and also outside of Bristol Bay and parts of the eastern Aleutians. That should improve there around Unalaska and Dutch Harbor tomorrow. IFR sets into the western side and around Gamble for St. Lawrence Island and east of the Pribilofs all the way to the Bering Seacoast of the Alaska Peninsula. VFR for southeast, most of south central and the Cook Inlet region, though IFR expected from Portage all the way down past the fjords and certainly Seward and the eastern side of Kodiak Island around Kodiak itself. And we'll keep our IFR for the Beaufort Seacoast throughout the day. Here are the pass conditions. Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass VFR throughout the daytime tomorrow. Looks good. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass starting at IFR, but improvements noted by the afternoon. Rainy Pass expected to be VFR. Same goes for Windy Pass on your Friday. Isabel Pass looking pretty good. VFR conditions there. Mentasta Pass we expect to see marginal conditions by the afternoon. Tanita Pass we expect to see VFR for your Friday, and IFR for Portage Pass, and of course that's going to be on the eastern side. If you're just running around the western side, things look pretty good. And Chilcoot and White Pass, A-OK, looking good. VFR conditions there, and warm. Did I mention that? Here's the freezing levels. Levels up to 2, even 4,000 feet a little bit further south of Haida Gwaii, but most of southeast under 2,000 foot or above freezing levels there, with surface freezing line jogging north to the Kenai Peninsula and then dropping just south to Sandpoint and back across the southern Bering. Also a pocket of warmth here right around Norton Sound, just above 2,000 feet. Here's a look at the icing potential, and we see a little bit of an enhanced risk around the Kodiak Island region, generally above 4,000 feet, and there's going to be snow and moisture lingering around the Yukon Valley tomorrow, so above 2,000 feet out in the east and above 6,000 feet a little bit further out in the west. So watch for some of that. Southeast looks pretty good. The North Slope looks pretty good, so no major risks involved in that direction. As we look at the jet stream, high pressure is helping that easterly wind at the surface. Look at this. We've got fast-moving winds coming in from the north and the east right into the Yukon Valley. Out across the Pacific, though, here is our superhighway of weather, and it's still well south of Alaska, but we've got this little off-ramp allowing that southerly moisture to make its way into southeast. And right now we're in a little bit of a break, but there's certainly an easy path for that moisture and more of that heat to return. At 9,000 feet, we see our broad northeasterly flow controlled by the high pressure system aloft, moving that wind across the Yukon Valley and the North Slope anywhere from 15 to about 20 knots. Down south, low pressure sitting just east in Salmon Point and south of Kodiak Island. That broad southerly flow comes into south central at about 25 knots or so. We have very light winds right now across southeast, generally moving from east to west at about 10 to 15 knots. And our west and southwesterly flow moving in from the North Pacific, coming in at 55 to 60 knots for the western chain. But that quickly becomes a northerly flow influenced by low pressure here, and you see that wind dives to about 20 to 25. At 3,000 feet, here's our easterly winds, again fairly light south of the Alaska Range, but for the Yukon Valley, those winds up to 15 to 30 knots. Easterly flow for the Beaufort Seacoast at around 20 to 25. Winds are still fairly light for southeast, 10 to 15 knots. That's a little bit more of a southerly component coming in here for south central, Kodiak Island and the Kenai Peninsula, coming in about south-southeast, 30 to 35. And out across the Bering Sea, more of a northerly flow over St. Paul, 20 knots there. On Alaska, at about 20 to 25, and westerlies are picking up out in the western chain. Turbulence potential is going to be limited more so to southwestern Alaska than it has been in recent days, below 4,000 feet by and large, and from about Ammonok through Nunivak Island into Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, and then west toward Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. If there's going to be an enhanced risk in all of this tomorrow, it will probably be from about the Barren Islands and Homer, Kamishak Bay, over to Lake Iliamna, Dillingham, and then southward toward King Salmon in that region. So keep your eye on the changing weather throughout the daytime tomorrow, all due to that low pressure system sitting there. Watch for some chop in the upper end of the Yukon Valley and, of course, around the Beaufort Seacoast. That's a look at your aviation forecast. We'll be back with the rest of your marine weather and sea ice in just a few minutes.
The 7-Day Stargazers Challenge.
Hey there, stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dehne Regis, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory. We're here to help you find your way around the sky. I know that observing the night sky can be kind of intimidating at first. With so many stars and planets out there, where do you begin?
Like everything, it takes practice. Make it your goal this week to get to know the moon, 2 colorful stars, and the planet of spring. We call it the Stargazers 7-Day Challenge.
We guarantee that if you watch the sky every night for 7 nights, you'll not only get to know the major stars, but some minor workings of the heavens as well.
And once you get a foothold in the stars, the sky's the limit.
Okay, we have our sky set for about 10 p.m. this week facing east. Let's start with the brightest star in this part of the sky, orange-colored Arcturus.
Arcturus is the brightest star in the constellation called Boötes. Although Boötes looks more like a really wide necktie, the ancients pictured a guy chasing after the Big Bear. Well, where is this Big Bear?
You might better recognize it as the Big Dipper, which appears high in the northeast. The Big Dipper is the rear end and tail of the Big Bear, Ursa Major, and the Big Dipper can help you find Arcturus in the sky. Just use the stars of the Big Dipper's handle to guide you. Follow the arc of the handle to Arcturus. Pretty catchy, eh?
We're not done yet. After you follow the arc to Arcturus, continue and straighten out the line from Arcturus, and you'll come to a bright blue star called Spica. Spica is the brightest star in the constellation Virgo the Maiden. Even though Virgo is one of the largest constellations in the sky, her starry outline is tough to imagine.
But Spica makes up for Virgo's obscurity as it twinkles radiantly in the southeast. So, to find Spica, start with the Big Dipper again, follow the arc to Arcturus, and then hit a spike to Spica. Okay, that's not quite as catchy, but maybe it'll help anyway.
Now, what about that planet of spring?
Oh yeah, it's up there too. See it? Let's fly up for a closer look. Our mystery planet this spring is above Spica, but it is a lot brighter. I'll give you some hints. It's the largest planet in the solar system, has a great red spot, 67 moons, and rhymes with Moopeter.
You got it, it's Jupiter. Good clues, by the way.
Thanks, they weren't too hard, were they?
Nah. Jupiter is at its closest point to the Earth this week, and if you look at it in a telescope, the view is incredible. So add this to your bucket list. See Jupiter in a telescope. If you don't have a telescope, visit your local planetarium, observatory, or amateur astronomy club, and they'll be happy to show you this amazing planet.
Now that you know some landmarks in the sky like Arcturus, Spica, and Jupiter, let's watch what the moon does. This is the best part of the challenge.
From night to night, the moon will shift ever eastward across the stars. So on April 8th, it'll be near Virgo's head, but on the 9th and the 10th,
wow, the moon will be right next to Jupiter.
well, it'll look like it's right next to Jupiter. The moon is a mere 246,000 miles away, whereas Jupiter is over 400 million miles away.
But wait, there's more. April 10th is also the night of the full moon, and it'll be near Spica as well. In miles, Spica will be over 1.5 quadrillion miles away.
You can see it for miles and miles. This will be a great week to view the sky. Try to get out there every night. Follow the arc to Arcturus and hit a spike to Spica tonight, and you'll see two super spring stars.
And giant Jupiter is easy to find while you monitor the migrating moon. If you do this for 7 straight nights, you'll complete our challenge and be forever hooked on stargazing. Keep looking up.
If you are watching Instagram today and happen to take a look out towards St. Paul, from any of the pictures coming out of St. Paul, you probably saw some sea lions, you probably saw some sea ice up on the beach, and then a lot of open water. This is what you're looking at from St. Paul off to the north and east. The main ice pack is still well away from St. Paul, but there certainly is some pockets of water and certainly some strips of ice that are very close to you. As analyzed today from our sea ice experts, they say the main strips of ice are about 7 nautical miles away from St. George, but it is awful close. There's that main ice pack right there, above 80% in concentration. Things are changing quickly in Bristol Bay. You can see a lot of reduction in the main ice pack there and in Cook Inlet. As far as what we expect for St. Paul and St. George, we've got about another day with northerly winds before the warmer air starts pushing northward toward St. Paul, St. George, and the southern Bering Sea. So changes continue wherever you are in the Bering Sea. Here's a look at southeast. Northerlies coming down the inner channels, 20 knots up north, down to 15 knots in the Clarence Strait. 3-foot seas expected there. Northwesterlies south of Sitka, anywhere from 8 to 9-foot seas on the 20 to 25 knot wind, and winds blowing offshore from Yakutat into Cross Sound, 20 knots with an 8 to 9-foot sea on Friday. That becomes northwesterlies we get into Saturday, 15 to 20 all areas there. Northerlies on the inside waters, Lynn Canal winds come up to 25 knots with a 5-foot sea. And southerlies in the Clarence Strait, 15 knots with a 3-foot sea, again on Saturday. For South Central, look for that easterly wind sweeping across the northern Gulf, 25 to as high as 35 knots there with seas to 13 feet. Southeasterlies coming into Kodiak Island at 30, and then storm force winds in Shelikof Strait, seas up to 17 feet there, 20 to 30 knot winds down Cook Inlet. Anywhere from 4 to 11-foot seas from the northern end of Cook Inlet to the areas west of the Barren Islands, 11-foot seas there. Variable winds develop on Saturday in Prince William Sound with a hint of spring. You might enjoy that. Northwesterlies outside into the Gulf. Winds remain fairly light as you move out toward Resurrection Bay and southward out into the water, and southerlies east of the Barrens and Kodiak Island, 15 knots there. Light winds west of the Barrens, easterlies 20 knots with a 4-foot sea, and north and easterly winds inside of Cook Inlet 10 to 15 with seas 2 to 3 feet. Northeasterlies will also be a lot stronger in the northeastern half of areas, say northeast of Chignik, up to 50 knots. Storm force winds will be fairly limited to the northeastern corner. They're just offshore of Kodiak Island and outside of Shelikof Strait. Seas could be as high as 18 feet there. Otherwise, considerably better conditions down the coast, up to 25 knots with a northwesterly flow and 7-foot seas expected down the coast. Northeasterlies inside of Bristol Bay with a 5-foot sea on Friday, becoming easterly at 20 knots with a 3-foot sea, and conditions greatly improve on Saturday from Fognak all the way out toward Chignik, 15 knots with a 7-foot sea, and northwesterlies down the coast, 25 knots with a 10-foot sea on Saturday for the rest of the Pacific coast. North and westerly winds for the western chain, 14 to 16-foot seas on a 25 to 30-knot wind as you get out toward the central and the eastern chain. 20 to 25 knots will do the trick. You can see kind of variable directions here across the Bering Sea coast as high pressure is trying to be in charge or not be in charge there. The winds will be shifting around a little bit more. 20 to 25 across the Pacific coast, up to 14-foot seas south of Adak and Atka. As we get into Saturday, things start to organize a little bit better. We've got a stronger low in the west, south and southeasterlies developing up to 21-foot seas there for areas from Kiska to Shemya. And here's the high pressure ridge still trying to be in charge. Southwesterlies bringing in winds to Nikolsky at 25 knots with an 8 to 9-foot sea. And northwesterlies from Nikolsky to Unalaska, 20 to 25 with 8 to 11-foot seas. For the west coast, here are those northerly winds, northwesterlies in fact, over St. Paul and St. George with periods of freezing spray still possible. 5-foot seas, there's 7-foot seas around St. Matthew, and an easterly flow over St. Lawrence Island. We'll keep the northerlies intact for at least part of Saturday before those warmer winds start to creep in from the south. 15 to 20 across areas closer to the coast and 15 knots around St. Paul and St. George with a 7-foot sea. The North Slope, stronger easterly winds will continue there. Blizzard conditions around the central Beaufort Seacoast and winter weather advisories for the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. The entire region will have poor visibility at times thanks to blowing snow. East and northerly winds down the Chukchi coast 10 to 15. A little bit of a change there on Saturday, but not much. Winds gradually improving as we head into the early and possibly late part of the weekend. Here's a recap of what's going on in your part of Alaska. Dry but windy conditions up north with poor visibility. Periods of rain mixed with snow across the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island. Periods of rain and snow showers closer to the northern Gulf Coast. And drier and mild conditions continue for southeast. How about that? Watch for pockets of rain mixed with snow across the central and eastern interior. A better chance you'll see snow at elevation and windy conditions for parts of the upper Koyukuk Valley as we head into the weekend. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.